Welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. If this information interests you, please press the like and subscribe button and press the bell for notifications. I hope you're having a great day today. It is June the 29th, and I have a couple questions to cover in this video. Now, if you are like some of the people who like to ask questions, I do recommend just posting your question as a comment in my most recent video is the best thing to do. Or you can email me directly at searchforsigns@mail.com. I will try to answer your question in the next video. If for some reason I can't find enough information on that question or I don't know enough about it that I feel like I will actually do it any justice by answering it, I'll tell you no, I don't know anything about it, okay? So I'm not dismissing the question. It just means that I don't know everything. Also, in the description of this video is a link to the Facebook page that I put up a few weeks ago. And I've been putting up various YouTube videos about these miracle signs. Anything from healing waters to the UFO over Jerusalem to when Maitreya, the time that Maitreya actually visited the church in Nairobi, Kenya. They're coming from people who don't know this information or don't believe anything in this information, so you can kind of get an objective, more objective view, I think, of a more independent view. Let me put it like that. I would like to think that my view is objective, but anyway, about these miracle signs. And if you do go to the Facebook page, I strongly suggest, and it's just a suggestion, to check out the video that's on the very top. It's the pinned post of the Hand of Maitreya. Benjamin Creme talks in a very brief video about what the Hand of Maitreya is, how it came about, to how you can use it to invoke Maitreya's help. In that post as well is a link to the Share International page that has the PDF file where you can download it or do a screenshot of the Hand of Maitreya and print it off or whatever you want to do. And there's a reason why I don't have the picture of the Hand of Maitreya directly on my Facebook page, and it really is because Benjamin Creme urged everyone not to put that image on their social media pages. So he said it cheapens the miracle, so I don't want to do that. But I don't think there's anything wrong with me sending a link to the Share International page. So hopefully that helps. All right. Now, since I only have a couple questions to cover in this video, I do want to talk about this man. This guy is Nelson Mandela, who was the former president of South Africa. But before that, of course, he was imprisoned for speaking out against apartheid in his country, and he was imprisoned for over 20 years. Most of us know the basic information in the history of who Nelson Mandela was. I always find his quotes very inspirational, and a lot of his speeches are unbelievable in terms of who he was as a person, really kind of comes out in those things. Now, what you might not know is, it kind of goes along with this information, is back in the 80s, when the Cold War was going on, the Berlin Wall was up, of course, apartheid was in South Africa and so forth, and there were some other things. Maitreya made a prediction. He gave his predictions to his associate. He's known as the associate of Maitreya, or Maitreya's associate, who was an Indian living in the Asian community of London along with Maitreya. And Maitreya gave him his predictions, and he went to Share International, and it was published in Share International. The dates were, it has a published date when Maitreya made the prediction, and then they started to happen one by one by one. And one of the predictions that Maitreya made through his associate was that Nelson Mandela would be freed. Now, at the time that he made that prediction, we got to understand, if we could go back in time, it seemed impossible. Like this quote, it seemed absolutely impossible that he was ever going to get released from prison. Now, what you might not know is that Maitreya actually visited Nelson Mandela while he was in prison. And there were times when Nelson Mandela even thought it was impossible that he would ever get out. Maitreya came, visited him. He knew who Maitreya was and who was visiting him. Maitreya encouraged him to write a letter to F.W. de Klerk. Now, I don't know the exact contents of the conversation between the two of them, but just to paraphrase from the way I heard it was, Nelson Mandela said to Maitreya, "There's no way that if I write a letter, will it even leave the prison grounds, let alone get to the presidential palace, let alone have him here, take the time to open up my letter And then even if he did open up my letter, he wouldn't even believe it or even do anything about it anyway. So what's the point? Maitreya said what he said to him, encouraged him, said, look, if you do write him this letter, I'll make sure through my whatever, however he could do it, that it would get out of the prison grounds and actually make it to the office of the president, and he would actually open it up. He also knew that, because he knows the hearts and minds of all of us, he knew that F.W. Clerk was sitting on the fence with all this, and that this letter would tip him over the edge to where he would actually release him from prison and start to bring about the change that was needed. He was apparently going through some serious soul searching about why apartheid was even in existence, apparently, even though he's putting on a totally different face to their media and so forth. And of course he did, and the letter got to him and the changes happened. Now, when I read this quote, it always seems impossible until it's done. I have no authority or proof to back this up, and Benjamin Creme never said anything about this. This is only my guess, is that quote sounds like Maitreya. So, and just, and I always kind of put myself in that cell along with Nelson Mandela when Maitreya was visiting him, and it sounds like something, it always seems impossible until it's done, right? So just try it and see what happens. So Nelson Mandela did what he he took the suggestion that Maitreya said and he wrote it, and that's how the change came about in South Africa. So anyway, hopefully that helps. All right. First question comes from Joku Vane. Does Oumuamua have nothing to do with Maitreya, or does it have anything to do with Maitreya? So to answer your question correctly, yes. It has nothing to do with Maitreya. No, I don't know. I don't know that much about Oumuamua other than what I've seen in terms of the NASA videos of it and so forth. I have a tendency to kind of side with the astrophysicists of NASA that it's just a celestial being like a comet or a meteor going through our solar system, and it's now out. I don't think it's an alien probe probing our civilization. Why do I not believe that? Is because if you're looking for intelligent life, in the universe, you don't have to go very far for it. You just as far as the nearest planets of Venus and Mars. Those two civilizations on that planet are far more advanced than ours. But now let me give a little background to it, okay? Every single planet in our solar system is inhabited by humanity. Most of that humanity is more advanced than ours. Some of them aren't, but there are fewer planets that actually aren't as evolved as Earth than there are more advanced than Earth. Mars is where we would be if we did not fall 100,000 years ago after the fall of the Atlantean continent. We would probably be where Mars is in terms of consciousness, level of consciousness, technology, and all that kind of stuff. Venus is unbelievably advanced. If we were to go there, we would see nothing less than gods, really. I mean, it's a perfect paradise on a planet. But they, as a form of service, come here and help us out. Especially, like I said, especially from Venus and from Mars, but also from Saturn and from Jupiter as well, but mainly Venus and Mars. A little side note, that the spacecraft that we see that are inhabited by the Venusians or the people from Jupiter or Saturn are typically built on Mars. Apparently they're much better at building ships and spacecraft than the other, and as a form of service they give it to them and so forth. But eventually our planet will become a part of that intra-solar system brotherhood, and we'll look after our younger planets in the same way that they've looked after us since we've started. But the Space Brothers and Sisters have been here helping us all along since the beginning, since before we had our own masters of wisdom from our own ranks, that came out of our own evolution and so forth. They were here as our masters of wisdom. But in the future, and not so distant future, we're not talking thousands of years, we're only talking a few decades, really. Once we put war behind us forever, Maitreya will give the go-ahead for them to give us the technology of light, and we'll learn how to use it. We'll learn how to use it to power our cities, how to transport from one part of the Earth to the other, maybe even from other planets and so forth, just like they do. Clean, efficient, and free. It'll also revolutionize our medicine, because they use the technology of light to regenerate organs, and eventually we'll be doing the same thing. So as if a person is, let's say, has a, needs a new liver, well, within karmic limits, the doctor will, the patient will go into the doctor's office, and within karmic limits, if they're able to, if it's best for them to get a new liver, or okay for them to get a new liver, they'll get a new liver regenerated by light, and they'll put it in the body, and boop, you got yourself a new liver. So it'll revolutionize life on this planet far better, far greater than we could possibly imagine in every aspect of life. All the artifacts that we build today, furniture, that kind of stuff, will be built with this technology of light. And like I said, our cities will be powered and be free, clean, won't affect the environment in the same way. We'll travel from point A to point B on our planet and other planets and around our planet and so forth via this technology of light and so forth. But it's highly destructive in the wrong hands. So until Maitreya sees that we have put war behind us, he won't give it to us. So the first step is we have to create peace on this planet. Now, it's not an ideal. It's not this lofty ideal. It will be brought down to the practical level, and the only way to do that is to share the world's resources. As Maitreya puts it, when you share, you recognize God within your brother. But his priority, Maitreya's priority, is without sharing, there could be no justice. Without justice, there could be no peace. Without peace, there could be no future. So we have to start sharing the world's resources with not only the developing world, but also within our own country and so forth, so that there is justice. Which leads me to the next question from Peter Miller. Do Black Lives Matter more than all lives matter? Well, Peter, you put that question up a couple days ago, and I've been thinking about it a lot, how I could answer this question. Not so much about offending or not offending somebody, but just how do you answer that question? Peter, I think you already know my answer, that all lives matter. I've been speaking about the hunger issue and so forth for, the videos that you've hopefully listened to, because you've commented on several videos. So, of course, all lives matter. Now, Peter, I'm just guessing. I don't know you. You don't know me. I'm not talking to you face to face. It's via a YouTube video, so to speak. But I'm assuming we're around the same generational age, right? I'm 48. You might be 48, maybe a little older. I don't know. And I'd be willing to bet you that you and I are both white. So we're both middle-aged white folks, right? How do I say this? I had it all in my mind, Peter, and then it just escaped me, so I'm having to kind of go off the fly again. What I recommend you do is do what I did a few weeks ago when I attended a few of the Black Lives Matter protests in Smyrna here, is if you see somebody with a Black Lives Matter shirt and the opportunity presents itself, just as a suggestion to you, you probably won't do it. I don't know, maybe you will, maybe you won't, doesn't really matter, but I'm just suggesting it to you. If you go up to them and you ask them, what are you protesting? Or even ask them this question, do Black Lives Matter more than all lives matter, or whatever you want to ask them. And just take the time to listen to them. Just like F.W. Clark listened to Nelson Mandela's letter, right? You will see, as I did, because I did that same thing. I didn't ask him, do all the Black Lives Matter more than all lives matter, but I asked him, why are you here? What are you protesting against, or whatever? And I just listened to them. From what I found from my own personal experience, Peter, is not one of them said only Black Lives Matter. And they did, and a lot of them actually went and started talking about, well, we see that all lives matter too. It's just that this has been going on in this country and we can't have it anymore. Now, from one middle-aged white person to another, this stuff's been going on for a long time. It's just now starting to it's all coming to the surface. This is that energy that I was talking about, the sort of cleavage. This is all coming to the surface so we can deal with this. But these crimes have been going on ever since this country's been around. And the time has come for us as a nation to face this issue and deal with it. And this is how it is coming to the surface. Now, I live in Atlanta, so a lot of this is very close to home because the second wave of protesting Rayshard Brooks happened in my own city, just a few miles from where I live. There's a lot of traffic. It might be a couple-hour drive, but I'm just kidding. If you're from Atlanta, you'd have found that funny. But anyway, it's just maybe 10 miles or so from where I live, maybe 12 miles or so was where that Wendy's that burnt down. But what happened is Rayshard Brooks was drunk, fell asleep, and passed out in his car in the drive-thru this Wendy's. The lady called the cops. The cops came, knocked on his window, and according to the body cams of the cops, it was a very peaceful exchange between the two of them, or the three of them, or whoever many cops there were. I think there was two cops in Rayshard Brooks, and maybe three cops. I can't remember exactly, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, it seemed like it was very cordial exchange until he, of course, grabbed the taser and tried to tase the cops. Right now, I wouldn't have done that, but even when I was drunk, I wouldn't have done that because I know that cops can go fly off the handle. I know a lot of police officers; they're all very nice people, but they're pit bulls. They're like guard dogs. You just can't do that kind of. You just don't walk up and pet a dog that's an attack dog, right? You just here, boy. They're that type of mentality. Now, to use Forrest Gump as a litmus test for this, stupid is as stupid does. How stupid does a cop have to be, knowing that all these protests are going around in the world with George Floyd, right? Knowing that everyone has a video camera on their phone, videotaping this exchange. It had to have been happening. They have to assume, if you're smart enough, you have to assume that you're being videotaped at all times, right? Especially in the environment that's going on with all these protests, to turn around as the guy's running away and shoot him in the back. Now, I don't have to tell you, Peter, like I don't have to tell anybody else, but Civics 101 in this country is the police do not have the authority to be the judge, juror, and executioner of somebody. There is a thing called due process, and it's a due process that we all hold dear as one of the sacred bedrock principles of this country. And yet, there are times when the police don't follow that rule. And it seems to be more skewed towards blacks, against blacks, right? And that's what they're protesting, right? So, here's a guy, he gave himself up by running away. Yes, he did turn around and shoot him with the taser, but they didn't shoot him then. They shot him as he was running away, okay? He was not an imminent threat to his community, so it wasn't like he grabbed a gun from the cop and was running away, that he could have shot somebody else. They also obviously had his car. They obviously knew where he lived. They obviously could have picked him up very, very easily, eventually. Now, from what I've heard from this situation on the news media, and this is from the far left to the far right and everybody in between, not one person has said that he should have gotten away with what he did, or he had the right to do that. They just said that the cops don't have the right to shoot him in the back, And so that's the reason why those cops are facing criminal charges now because of that, right? So it is a sorry state of affairs in this country when we think that cops have the right to do that, because they don't. That's what our country was founded on, right? That's the reason why I've been fighting against the Patriot Act forever, because that violates the Constitution as far as I'm concerned, the due process. But they did that all in, quote unquote, keeping America safe, and so forth. Now, getting back to the FW de Klerk, de Klerk and Nelson Mandela situation, where he listened to Nelson Mandela's letter, and then the change happened. Our president is not listening, to what these people are fighting for and protesting against. And so therefore he's pushing back, and they're going to push back. Now, most of the time that these protesters protest, they protest miles away from anything. Now they're actually getting in their face. And this cracked me up because they're actually protesting Mitch McConnell's home in Kentucky, saying no justice, no sleep. Keeping them up at night. But anyway, they're getting in their face because they know that there's not going to be any change until they get right in their face. Now, the first knee-jerk reaction from the president was to build up a fence around the White House. Do you realize, Peter, there was a time when you could just walk right up on the grounds of the White House, knock on the door, and go in and talk to the president? You didn't even need an appointment. That was back in the day, obviously, but that's how that was the relationship between the people and our government. Now, how restricted we are from interacting with them, and now he's put up another barrier around the White House to keep them out. Had it been different, had he just listened to them? So like I said, it goes back to my suggestion. Just if you see somebody and your spirit so moves you, just ask them a question and just sit back and listen. Just take the time to listen. Somebody brought up I think a good point is, when you go to somebody's birthday party, right? And they're blowing the cake out and everybody's wishing them a happy birthday. It doesn't mean that your birthday wasn't important. It just means this is not your birthday. You know what I'm saying? So this is about them right now. It's not about us. Doesn't mean that your life doesn't matter, Peter, or my life, or anybody else that's white or any other nationality. It just means that their life matters. Of course, right? Now, I am going to read one of Benjamin Creme's Master's article. I'm going to kind of segue into this. And he's talking about the tsunami of December 2004. Now, you might be going, why are you going to bring this up? This has nothing to do with now, right? I know some people get frustrated with me because they feel like this is all old news, right? Well, if you look at it, what's going on today, energetically, there's been these tsunamis that have been going on, these waves of energetic change, so to speak. You got the coronavirus, and now you have a massive unemployment in this country and around the world, and there were lockdowns and so forth. Now you got the Black Lives Matter protests going on, and cities are, raging, there's protests and all this stuff. What's next kind of thing, right? And I don't think this is the end of it. I think there's going to be more and more waves until we finally wake up to the fact that there should be universal justice in the world and so forth. But if you take the time, Peter, to listen to this in this article, after he's talking about the tsunami of the Indian Ocean and so forth, he talks about how the governments need to listen to the people. The people know what's best, and if they don't, they will lose power, and they will be either voted out of power or they'll be removed from office forcibly. So Trump, Democrats, Republicans, I said this in the last video, are all being run by corporations which do not have the interest of the people. They only have the interest of the boardrooms, and so the bailouts, the lion's share of the money goes to all the supporters of the political parties. Doesn't go to the people, doesn't make it to the people. These people are fighting for what they feel is right. And it has nothing to do with your life not mattering, Peter. It has to do with their life. They should not have to be subjected to, a cop who thinks it's okay for them to shoot them in the back as they're running away. George Floyd committed crimes, but, I've had people in my work give me a phony 20 and I didn't call the cops on them. I've had people, I just gave them the money back and told them, said, do you have another form of payment? You know what I'm saying? I've had people who have passed out from drinking too much in the parking lot of where I work, and I didn't call the cops on them. I begged them to take their car keys out of the ignition and go sleep it off. Some of them listened to me, some of them didn't. But the whole thing could have been handled differently on all sides, and it just exploded into this whole thing. But this is all what's been going on for decades, decades and decades and decades, just in this country, but it's boiling up to the surface. But it's this energy, this sort of cleavage that's causing it to happen. We have to deal with this and face it before we can get on with life. There can never be justice in this world when there's racial inequality. There can never be true justice in this world when people are starving to death. And it's just going to keep coming up to the surface, Peter, and it's going to keep coming up to the surface and coming up to the surface until we deal with it. And the only way to deal with it is to come together as a people and convince our countries to take the resources that are just sitting there wasting and give it to those who need it. And then, as Benjamin Creme's master said, the tensions will ease. But anyway, so I'm talking, again, this video is about, and the article in this video is about, that I'm reading, Benjamin Creme's master's article was written in January, February of 2005. about the tsunami of December 2004, but if you look at it in terms of not an actual tsunami, but an energetic tsunami, which is what's been hitting the world as a whole, it can make a lot of sense, and you kind of plugging it into what's going on today. But then when he gets down to the listening to the people, this is where it's key of what I'm bringing it up. So hopefully this helps. Out of darkness. From time to time, the natural forces of this planet demonstrate their irresistible power in a way destructive and unwelcomed by men. Thus it was in the recent catastrophe in the Indian Ocean. The sad and sudden loss of thousands of lives and the unprecedented damage to the homes and other buildings have shocked the world and evoked a remarkable response. For the first time, the nations, East and West, North and South, have come together in spontaneous aid. Governments are prodded by their people to give and to cancel outstanding debts for the poorest countries. The wave of sympathy for the bereft has manifested also as a concern for the needy millions of all the developing world, and is a sure sign that the peoples are ready for Maitreya. No clearer indication could be given that this is so. No one could doubt the sincerity of this concern. The tragedy of the tsunami has opened the hearts and inspired the voices of millions for the creation of justice and world transformation. At last, these voices are being heard. At last, the beneficent energies of Maitreya are finding response in the hearts of many still unaware of his presence. At long last, the peoples call for justice and peace. They sense that their future, too, depends on listening to the voice of the people, rising with an ever clearer and powerful note. Let the governments understand the voice of the people is the voice of wisdom. It is a call for realism and truth, for the only action which will lead to a sane and better world. Thus, those governments which fail to listen to that voice will founder and lose authority and the trust of their people. Maitreya, meanwhile, awaits the moment to emerge, judging finally the pros and cons. He welcomes the signs of men's readiness and knows that the moment is not far off. He welcomes the opportunity to work openly for humanity and the plan. In this way, his power and effectiveness are immeasurably increased. Also in this way, he can work directly with men, showing his concern for their welfare and comfort, his understanding of their needs and difficulties, his awareness of the problems and how they can be solved. He wishes to be seen as a brother and a friend, a wise father whose counsel is beneficent and true, a helpmate and partner on the journey into the shining future which awaits all men. Be patient, therefore, a little longer, and know that despite the problems and difficulties, the heartache of loss, the plan for the transformation of the world and the salvation of men is on course for victory, and that all will be well. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.